Hello, my friends. This is Yelena. Thank you so much for tuning in into our virtual broadcast. I have a very special guest today. As always, this is a way for me to share important information, and I hope you will find our topic today super interesting because today we're talking about how to stay corona free. And my dear friend, I know him for more than 15 years now, Dr. Todd Ovokaitys. So Dr. Todd Ovokaitys had a passion for science from the time he was 5 years old. He was first in his class in high school, receiving the Bosch and Lomb Science Award and the Bucky Pioneer Award. He was accepted into an accelerated and combined graduate and undergraduate program at Johns Hopkins University Medical School. Then he advanced into training at the Georgetown University Hospital with a residency and chief residency in internal medicine, followed by a fellowship in pulmonary and intensive care medicine. So during his pulmonary fellowship, the specialty that concerns the lungs, as you all know, Dr. Todd began his research with cells of the immune system. Many procedures were done on AIDS patients to diagnose their lung problems. Observing this dire disease firsthand and the toxic results of early medical treatment, Dr. Todd developed a passion for finding better solutions. And this is where Gematria Products was born. Dr. Todd presented all over the world on a lot of important missions, symposiums, and workshops and trainings all over the Europe and the United States. Especially remarkable his presentation back in 2004, and as South African Journal of Natural Medicine was writing that in March of 2004, Dr. Todd Ovokaitys addresses the South African Natural Medicine Conference in Stellenbosch and received ovation for his work from doctors and professors of medicine who heralded his work as groundbreaking and worthy of a Nobel Prize. He brought the whole audience and perhaps even the whole event to a single moment of wonder with an image of the AIDS virus being destroyed by a single blue light resonating at a frequency that shattered its membranes. Dr. Todd is a researcher. He had a vision and he created this very special cheat technology and other innovations that he will, I hope, share with us today. And right now, my friends, let me transfer my camera back at Dr. Todd. So please welcome Dr. Todd, you're on air.
Yay, well, so great to see you again, my good friend Yelena. Always a pleasure.
So we are so excited to have you here today. I could speak about you, if we had time, even more. But just I wanted to give people a little bit more background on your research and about your practices and where you began so they have an understanding. So we're here today obviously to talk about corona pandemic, how to navigate it. As far as we know, it will be coming back, it's going to be leaving, coming back. So we know this process is going to linger for a while. So what do we do?
Well, it's an excellent question. And for those of your listeners who want a complete picture, I've created a special report called COVID-19 Preventatives and Potential Cures, and it really lays out a systematic approach to it. Now, everybody is pretty aware of the basic things like social distancing and covering your mouth when you cough and the shelter at home recommendations, wash your hands and so forth. And I review that, make a few points that aren't generally being made, which are a little bit interesting. So I would say there's three levels of discussions. There's the basic stuff that's out there and a few refinements there. There's what happens if someone actually catches corona, what can be done, and I review what to do in early phase infection. And then there are some salvage pathways that aren't really being well talked about in the media that have shown 100% success rates of recovering persons with the advanced pulmonary disease that is otherwise life-threatening. So all that information, including some of the photobiology, the ways that light can be used very effectively as a treatment, are included in the report, and I'll be happy to send that to you, and you can make it available to everyone so they can have all the details. And we can cover, I think, some of the highlights here, if you like.
Yes, please, we are ready.
Mm-hmm. So on the social distancing side, one of the interesting pieces of information, so I've researched this quite intensively the past several weeks, and have a basic report for everyone, and then a more advanced report that is technical for doctors and scientists. From the basics, it's the mechanism, the typical mechanism for any respiratory virus to be spread is called respiratory droplets, which means someone sneezes or coughs, and these little tiny droplets that are very small, micron size typically, linger in the air for a while, and if someone inhales them in, they're small enough to go all the way deep into the lung. Or with a virus like corona, it actually tends more to impact in the upper respiratory passages. Larger droplets will tend to get into the nose and sinus, the smallest can go deep in the lung, and there they will set up shop and propagate and develop the infection. So the biggest key is respiratory droplets and avoiding being close to someone who's coughing or sneezing. Now, the biggest comment I'd like to make is this 6 feet recommendation. And you think, well, 6 feet, that sounds pretty good, it's enough. Well, it's good enough if people are just in regular breathing mode. It turns out, as I look into the research on coughing and sneezing, that a cough can eject 3,000 respiratory droplets at 50 miles per hour, a distance of 18 feet around the person. Not 6 feet, 18 feet. And a sneeze is even more violent. It gets up to 100 miles per hour and 100,000 particles that can go 24 feet.
Oh my God.
Yes, exactly. So 6 feet is really not enough if someone's sneezing and coughing. If they're sneezing and coughing, it's better to go somewhere else. Because
run.
Not only, what's that? Run. Run, Forrest, run.
Run, Forrest,
away.
Run.
Keep away.
Yeah.
And the other factor is that the droplets don't drop to the ground immediately. They can stay suspended for at least 10 minutes. So the recommendations for masks make sense if you're going through an area that may have a concentration of people that could be coughing or sneezing anytime 10 minutes before you get in the room, basically. So those recommendations actually could be tightened up a little bit. I think the big thing is if you see someone obviously that looks sick, that's coughing or sneezing, then it's better just to
run.
Really far away. Run.
One advice, run.
So that's the first step. Now, the next level is beyond doing those basic hygienic measures, social distancing, hand washing, masks where there could be exposure to respiratory droplets, even if it's deposited in the air before you get in the room. There is the data that demonstrates certain nutrients taken in particular doses make a big difference. The best study with classic influenza A showed that a particular nutrient, this is the single most important nutritional recommendation because it's validated by a large, well-conducted clinical study, which was done in Italy, where they took a large group of people in flu season, they gave half the active compound, which is called N-acetylcysteine, or NAC, the typical abbreviation for it, and the other half just got the placebo. What was interesting is that both groups were found to have been exposed to flu roughly the same amount when they did the blood testing for antibodies, but the group that didn't take the supplement had a 79% likelihood of symptomatic flu, which was reduced to 25% if they took the supplement.
Wow.
And those that took the supplement only had a much lower risk of having any symptoms, uh, much lower rate of hospitalization, much shorter duration of infection if they were symptomatic. So that one nutrient alone reduced the risk of symptomatic infection by about 70%. And the dosage that was required was 600 milligrams twice a day. So of all the recommendations, if someone did just that one thing, the likelihood of a symptomatic outbreak is probably reduced comparably. Now, it's not exactly the same virus, so we don't have data that could be exactly one-to-one, but respiratory viruses tend to work similarly, and it's reasonable to expect it would work because the mechanism is a basic immune boosting mechanism. So in our many discussions about health and nutrition, we often talk about antioxidants. And the single most important antioxidant in the cells is called glutathione. The reason NAC is useful is that it's the primary building block in the body to make glutathione. It's actually a very simple molecule. It's 3 amino acids stuck together, and N-acetylcysteine is a delivery form of an amino acid called cysteine, which has been shown to build glutathione levels in the cell. And there are many lines of evidence for a variety of viruses, especially HIV, which I've studied a lot, as you know, that to the degree that you build glutathione levels, you reduce the susceptibility to the virus and you reduce the virulence of the virus. And that takes us to the next nutrient, which is selenium. And it's really interesting that one single nutrient has been shown to have a profound benefit with viral infection as well as cancer, for that matter. And with respect to HIV, it was found that countries that had high selenium in the soil had adult population infection rates as low as 0.5 to 1%. Whereas if there was low selenium in the soil, even with the same risk factors in terms of cultural practices, as it were, that instead of 0.5%, it went as high as 25%. So selenium is another factor that taking an adequate amount seems to be very protective in general with viral infections. And the mechanism is similar because selenium is required for a key enzyme that makes glutathione work called glutathione peroxidase. So if you give N-acetylcysteine, you boost glutathione. If you give selenium, you boost the effectiveness of the enzymatic mechanism through which glutathione works. So those two factors are very relevant. Another nutrient that is particularly vital for corona is zinc. And there's a buzz around hydroxychloroquine as a medication that has shown beneficial effects, especially if used early in the course of infection. And a key mechanism that is the dynamic action, the effective action, is hydroxychloroquine is increasing the delivery of zinc into the affected cell. So zinc in many studies has been shown to generally boost immune function, so zinc is another of the factors. In terms of quantities of these substances, the studies suggest that for selenium, an optimal amount would be roughly 140 to 200 micrograms per day. And for zinc, the so-called recommended daily intake is 15 milligrams per day. And as we have in our seminars before, we've really shared that there are more and less effective delivery mechanisms for minerals. And for zinc especially, you can get an inorganic form, like zinc sulfate, which has been used in the studies with corona, for example, which has many limitations of its absorption versus something called amino acid chelate, where amino acids wrap around the mineral and significantly increase both needed absorption as well as delivery into the cells. So if you're taking a chelate, the RDA is probably adequate at 15 milligrams per day. If it's not like zinc sulfate, you probably need 3 to 6 times the RDA, which is what the doctor getting great results in New York using the hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc together is getting. So those would be the basics there. The best form of selenium for absorption is typically selenium-methionine, often derived from yeast. So just doing those two things already makes a big difference. Vitamin C has 60,000 articles showing its various benefits for the body, particularly for immune enhancement and improved course of viral infections. For the usual dosage, just for general enhancement, I would suggest at least 1 to 2 grams per day. Vitamin D is also important. And one of the reasons it's believed that flu season happens in the winter months is that vitamin D levels drop in the body, which increases susceptibility. And there's evidence that there's a particular vitamin D receptor that will specifically enhance the function of immune cells for viral infections. Now, many people have suboptimal levels of vitamin D. The early recommendations for adequate levels of vitamin D in the body were 30 nanograms per mil, but more recent data suggests much better health along many factors, not just resistance to infection, as well as anti-tumor immune surveillance effects, is more in the range of 60 to 80 nanograms, minimally 40. So because most people are deficient, at least for, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks, taking 5,000 IU per day would be reasonable. And after that, the best is to actually check blood levels and then adjust one's intake to reach the optimal range. Vitamin A builds respiratory tissues, so the RDA amount of vitamin A is also appropriate to take. And as you mentioned, we have a nutraceutical company called Gematria. The former that we prepared and used quite effectively for HIV in Africa, where we provided it at no charge for villagers and had very good results. We have a formula called so-called AIR, Accelerated Immune Recovery, and that formula was associated with more than doubling the rate of immune recovery from HIV infection combined as part of our whole program. And that one formula provides all 6 of the nutrients we discussed in adequate amounts, except for vitamin C, which would need to be taken separately. It contains some vitamin C, but not at the full level of 1 to 2 grams per day. So that combination alone is likely, just based on all the research around it, to reduce the likelihood of symptomatic infection by 80% or more. So those are some things that can be done. Now, there are other ways to boost.
So what is the name of that formula again?
It's air caps.
Air caps. Is this like Feeder 5000 or this is one of your new one?
It's been around a while. It's been around since we did our 7 years of study in Africa using that formula. And it was used with other formulas as well, 3 formulas together, air spray, air caps, and the immune botanicals. And that combination significantly accelerated immune recovery compared to just using the medications for HIV alone. So we proved the fact that it accelerates immune recovery in 7 years of clinical trials, and it was quite safe and even neutralized side effects some of the people are having from the medications.
That's incredible.
That's a recipe of validated immune boosting nutrients. There are others that can be beneficial, of course. There are the medicinal mushrooms, maitake, reishi, shiitake, and others that have compounds that stimulate immune function effectively, though they're not specifically studied in the context of corona. Nonetheless, they're probably generally beneficial. What's particularly interesting and worthy of mention is this controversy around saunas.
Yes, please. I was one of those people who in the first days was going to sauna. Every time I have to go outside, I would not go home. First I'd go in a sauna and then I would go home.
Right, exactly.
Russian style, you know?
Exactly. I remember I watched a podcast on the Joe Rogan show, and the guest was asked that question about saunas eliminating corona. And he gave an answer that was addressing whether the heat would kill the virus directly. And there's another controversial piece of information out there that if you get to 132 degrees, that kills the virus. However, it's difficult to get the tissues to that temperature, even if you're inhaling the hot air of the sauna, because the body is designed to stay cooler. So the guest suggested that there was no benefit to the sauna, and it needs a little bit of further explanation, because while it may not achieve the heat that will directly kill the virus, it does generally boost the immune function, but it's through a different mechanism. It's called something of the nature of a heat shock protein. So the sauna use increases so-called heat shock protein 70, and that boosts immune function. So that the utility of the sauna is not directly eliminating the virus, but it's strengthening your body to be able to minimize and mitigate the effects of the virus. So I would go back in the sun.
Okay, well, they're all closed right now, so that was before everything got closed. So
Well, if you visit us, we have one at home. So.
yes, I would love to. I would love to. One day. So, what do you say about the people for age, people in a certain age, right? This is the group that has higher risks, right? So people with already other autoimmune disorders and with all kind of other diagnoses. So what would be your recommendation, even when they get access, for example, to one of those supplements, which I'm sure they could find on your website, www.gematria.com. Do they need to take high dosage, or how does it work for people who has like complicated already, health?
Excellent question. So for the air caps, to get optimal amounts of everything except vitamin C, 2 capsules twice a day covers it. So there's no particular benefit to taking more. And for example, you can take too much selenium. While 200 micrograms may be an ideal amount for generally supporting immune function, 400 micrograms per day is a threshold beyond which it can be toxic. So you have to be careful. Not everything is amenable to large dosing. For those persons, the one thing I might suggest taking more of would be vitamin C. So instead of taking a gram twice a day, it would probably be good to take 2 to 3 grams twice a day, which is an amount that the GI tract can tolerate, but would give another edge, another measure of protection. Other than that, though, the recommendation should be basically the same for the nutritional support factors. They might be more inclined, if they have access to infrared saunas, to do it. Not for direct eliminating virus, but for the general beneficial effects. Another method that's being used more recently for immune enhancement is, strange enough, cryotherapy, which uses gaseous nitrogen to create very cold temperatures around the body, typically minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit or less. That's something that I've started doing as well, after months of thinking that was a very crazy and insane thing to do. Who would want to
I tried it. I tried it. We did it.
Yeah, and actually I think it's fantastic, and you get this wonderful endorphic runner's high kind of feeling for hours afterwards, and also has a general immune enhancing effect. So for persons that are more at risk, besides the hygienic factors of social distancing, and being even more careful about hand washing, being around where people may be sick, especially doing the nutritional factors and other general immune enhancers would be very wise. Now, the next set of issues, what about the person who actually is getting symptoms? And this gets a little bit controversial. And there was a study from France that was very enthusiastically received, which showed that a combination of two medicines, hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, between the 5th and 6th days showed complete elimination of shedding of the virus. And it was quite safe in that small study. And that really showed that the combination was truly reducing the presence of the virus. And hydroxychloroquine alone, by the 6th day, was, I believe, around 58% in terms of how much of the viral shedding had been stopped. No treatment was only about 12%, but with the combination, it was 100%. Like, none of the subjects who got the combination were shedding any virus. Actually, by the 5th day, it stopped, and then by the 6th day, it was definitely confirmed that they were not shedding virus anymore. That gave credence to the use of that combination. And then it was one of those, like, local hero type stories. A very bright doctor in New York used that combination, the two medications, plus zinc sulfate, 220 milligrams per day. And at a time early in the epidemic, when the numbers were really quite concerning and raised great concerns about the ultimate impact of the epidemic, was that particularly people that were symptomatic, roughly 20% were being hospitalized, and there was 5% mortality. And using his protocol, he reported 500 cases where young people who would not be in that risk category, he waited till they actually had more severe symptoms, such as shortness of breath, whereas older people with the risk factors of other conditions, he gave it the slightest indication of symptoms. And in 500 cases, he had no hospitalizations and no mortality.
Wow, that is impressive.
Well, yeah. And then there was a follow-up when he had 699 cases with only 4 hospitalizations and no one that went into respiratory failure. Now, there was one person who died, but that person actually didn't follow the protocol.
That's what I was going to say. They probably didn't listen.
So there's been some other work that is a chart review study from the VA on hospitalized patients, but it's quite different. The people that are already sick in the hospital and then starting the medications, then it wasn't clear whether there was a benefit. Maybe people had a worse if they took just the hydroxychloroquine. But even there, the combination seemed to be no worse than not taking the hydroxychloroquine. So from what I get from that, from the best evidence that I have so far, for earlier stage disease, when people aren't too sick, if young people, there is waiting for a more symptomatic threshold of shortness of breath, as Dr. New York did, and then people that are really at risk, if they're started very promptly with the first sign of symptoms, that's the best case series that we have so far that suggests a significantly improved outcome.
That's amazing. I'm always, happy to have some good news. What would you say about this whole prognosis? So right now, they're releasing the stay-at-home orders, right? So people are, kind of going to be more active, and then they're saying that it's going to, ease up, and then it's going to come back during the winter time. So what would you say for your personal, obviously, speculations on the coronavirus dynamics?
Well, it's very interesting. There is a doctor from Israel who made the statement, and I don't know if the numbers bear this out yet, but their observation is that when the virus really comes into an area and is very active, there tends to be about a 70-day course, and then after that it really falls off very significantly. So if that's true, we really are at a point that we should begin expecting things to be tailing off relatively quickly. So in America, at least, throughout the US, we are probably within 2 to 4 weeks of things really settling down so we can get past the lockdown and stay-at-home orders and get back more to business as usual. That's part of the reality. Now, the greater question that where we really won't know till we get there is, as in the flu epidemic of 1918 and 19, will there be another wave of this pandemic that comes through in the next respiratory viral season?
Yes.
And for all we know, there may well be. We'll be better prepared. We'll have more information. There are many studies going on different interventions. Antivirals like remdesivir has some promising early data, for example. That I think we'll be better prepared for it. We'll know more about the virus. There'll be more interventions. I'm anticipating that if there isn't a wave that comes next winter season, that it's not going to be as intense as this one. There ought to be many people who will have had it and be immune to it, at least as far as we know. I think there are some cases where there's concern that they got it and might not be fully immune to it. I think that's pretty exceptional so far. It's not going to be the general case. So there may be, I think it will be diminished compared to what we've seen this time around. There'll be more solutions. And maybe more people will be doing the preventatives as well to build up their own immune system, doing all the general things. Eating well, sleeping well, getting generally well nourished, avoiding toxins, avoiding smoking, doing sauna, cryo, meditating, reducing stress, all those factors. I think that even if there is a replay, the impact will be less. We'll have more tools, but then we'll have more understanding by then. I don't think we'll have the same kind of disruption in the next winter season as we had in this one.
Thank you so much. I have a question for you, Dr. Todd. And again, taking an opportunity, guys, this is a unique opportunity for us to have Dr. Todd, here with us on air. He's has a very busy schedule. He's always in Zoom meetings. He's always, busy with a lot of, billion-dollar projects and ideas. And so for those of you that after each show that I have, people are asking, Yelena, what is your youth elixir? Well, one of the secrets is Dr. Todd. I've been taking his supplements for the past, I don't know, as long as I know you, right? For 10 years, and I take something, I take a course, and then I go back to it. So this is something that is always in my house, is Gematria supplements. They are very special. They're not just any other supplements, and whatever you take, it's not just going to be this supplement you can find in any of the shelves in the CVS and Walgreens. So what makes it special is the personal invention of Dr. Todd, the special technique that he has his special technique. Maybe you'll share a little bit more about that, how you treat your supplements, what makes them so special, and then tell these beautiful ladies, how to stay young forever, because Dr. Todd's one of his specialties is anti-aging, ladies.
Well,
I spilled the beans.
That's an awesome segue from the COVID-19 pandemic to
well, ladies are ladies, we always want to know. Since we're at it, we might as well take one more supplement.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, I think you look younger now than when I met you, so something's going well.
That is true.
That's awesome. And actually, if you want, I can send you the anti-aging book I've written.
Yay!
With clinical studies that validate anti-aging effects of particular compositions. The technology we use, in a very short nutshell description, is we've engineered a new type of laser waveform that starts with a laser, then creates an ultra high frequency set of impulses that are as fast as molecules vibrate and rotate to create, as it were, enhanced versions of the nutrients that we see increased biological effects. Our best studies are in agriculture, where we see no nutrients, added nutrients, and same nutrients that are laser activated, where the same nutrients that would give a 20% increase in yield, just adding the laser that gives a 60% increase in yield. And nutrients that double the quantity of a micronutrient like a mineral in the plant can be increased 4 to 5 times if that same formula is enhanced. So it's about improving the biological absorption and the utilization and the biological action of the nutrients. So milligram for milligram, the formulas tend to give a greater biological result. Our most validated anti-aging formula is Methuselah, after Methuselah, Genesis 5:27, who is said to live to be a ripe 969 years old. And as far as I'm concerned, we're getting to an area where we will have the technology that we can potentially achieve that kind of longevity. So there are a series of formulas that are led by Methuselah that are about literally giving the cells what they need to regenerate and rejuvenate. In that study, we based our composition on an animal model where the use of the nucleic acids literally doubled and tripled the lifespans of the animals, even when it began when the animals were quite old. So there's a lot of information. It's actually in detail and referenced in a book called Growing Younger, which I'll provide that to you for your listeners as well, Yelena.
Yes, thank you.
And to be complete, I really need to discuss that we're also very heavily into work with stem cells, and we've made a discovery.
Yay!
And our discovery is that we have in the laboratory validated our ability to separate just from a person's blood. Doesn't require putting a needle in the bone marrow or harvesting fat, doing anything very invasive, just a basic blood draw, that we were able to separate from a person's blood a very special type of stem cell called a V cell that at around the time we're born, for unknown reasons, goes to sleep. And because it goes to sleep, because it's hibernating, it's not dividing. Because it's not dividing, it's not getting older. Its telomeres aren't shortening. And we've proven that we can, with our method, separate those cells from blood, and with the modification of our laser process, awaken the dormant cells, and then literally direct them where we want them to go in the body. So the anti-aging and rejuvenation effects of that are rather astounding. And we have some cosmetic applications for that as well. If we provide the cells directly into the face, they can really make you look a lot younger. So that's a very short description of the anti-aging highway.
Thank you so much, Dr. Todd. Thank you for your time. Well, my friends, this is Dr. Todd Ovokaitys. His website is www.gematria.com. Please make sure to go check it out. Make sure you are getting ready, because nobody knows what is happening. So it is our responsibility, to stay healthy, take care of our bodies, take care of our bodies, of our children, take care of our parents. It is our job right now to like and share this video. Make sure share with your friends, share it with your family members. The more people will stay prepared, healthier, with a boosted and prepped immune system, the healthier we all going to be, and the faster this whole pandemic will cease to exist. So this was my pleasure to have Dr. Todd Ovokaitys. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact me or email me. Otherwise, until next time, my friends, and don't forget to subscribe to my new YouTube channel, my friends. Until I see you again.